Okay, we're live. So then, who wants to go first? Katie, do you want to go first or should I?
Yep, I'll go first. Let
All right.
me share my screen and hope it doesn't freak out on me this time. Okay, so I've done state diagrams this week, continuing on my diagram spree. So state diagrams are just an illustration of the states that an object can be in and how it transitions between the different states and the events that trigger those changes. So the state of a diagram shows the different conditions an object can take during the object's lifetime, and the triggers show the flow of control or transition from one state or condition to another. And my screen has gone black again. Okay, there we go. It does that every time. I don't know why. Okay. So objects have behaviors and states, meaning that they both know things, which is the current state of the object. It knows what it has to be doing right now. And it does things, which is the transition when it's completed its current objective in its current state. The state shows the behavior of an object in that state, and there are different states that an object has, and the main ones being the initial or the creation state, and then the ending state or the final one. So the initial state, as I said, is the creation, where the object is first initiated or created, and it has a transition out of that initial state. The final state has no transition. So once it hits that stage of the program, it's done. There's a completion to it, and it can't leave that state. Transitions are the progressions from each different state, starting at creation, leading to the final. And these transitions are triggered by different events that are either internal or external to the object. So when you're creating a state diagram, it's pretty much going off of the other two diagrams that I presented on. They all kind of work together to show the whole program and how it works. So this is the different, what's the word I'm looking for? Processes that happen within the program that go along with the rest of it all. That made no sense anyways. So you pick the beginning and the end states, and you have to figure out the in-between things after you know how many states there are to get to this from the start to the end. And then from there, you can figure out what is going to trigger each movement from the beginning to the end. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this. Sorry, guys.
You're doing fine.
Oh, thanks. The diagrams themselves are made up of different shapes to represent the states. The initial beginning creation is just a solid circle. This circle with an X through it shows a process that has what they call escaped or has failed because it didn't work, and I'll show you that in one of the examples I have. And then the different states that the program can be in are represented by rectangles. An empty rectangle means that it just has no internal processes. Once the trigger hits that, it can do its thing, and then move on to the next one. But a rectangle with two sections in it, it shows the title of what that state does, and then also on the inside it shows the processes that need to run before it can move on to the next state. And then when it reaches the end, that final state is represented as a solid circle with a border. So these are two different examples that I found. The one on the left shows two different programs, one external and one internal, and how they interact with each other. So the main program is checking the date in the calendar. It's initiated. It moves to the state if it's failed because the calendar is not available. You see that X circle when it goes back to start the process. If it does complete, that date is available. It moves down and it adds the appointment. On the left, we have an ATM example, and this shows an external process interacting with an internal process, and then the internal processes that interact with each other to get to the end. So the beginning, the ATM is idle. Then it's triggered when someone inserts the card. Once they insert the card, the process is to verify, and its internal process that it has to run is to ask for the PIN. If the PIN gets validated, it moves down to the transaction program, which has all those other internal programs that are initiated. It again gets prompted, and they choose a transaction, they verify it, and it goes through all those processes until they complete and they don't need to withdraw any more money, or they're done with whatever they do. However, if at the beginning the verification for the PIN is failed, that diamond, there should be another X circle like on the left, but there's not in this one, but there should be, because that would show that it failed because there was an invalid PIN, and it would go back to the top part and they'd have to start over with that process. So that is the gist of it.
Nice work.
Now I got to figure out again how to stop sharing my screen so that you guys can present.
Looks like you haven't stopped.
Okay, good. Hey, Davey.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
All right.
And then McNeil was messaging during a lot of that.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
So he's still here.
Yes. I sent him an email like 5 minutes ago. So
cool.
That's funny.
Well, shall we move on to mine? Mine is not nearly as long as that.
Let's do it.
All right. Let me go ahead and tell this to present. And then share my screen. All right, so I had the next one, which was sequence diagrams, and I'm really grateful for Katie because she really covered a lot of the nuts and bolts that I didn't think to cover in mine. So a sequence diagram follows kind of a similar pattern to a state diagram, but a sequence diagram shows object interactions arranged in time sequence. So it depicts the objects and the classes involved in the scenario and the sequence of messages that are exchanged between the objects that are needed to carry out the functionality of the scenario. So like a state diagram shows the various states and the transitions between them, as Katie showed us, but this is showing kind of the sequence, the order in which things have to happen in order for it all to work out. Sequence diagrams are typically associated with the case realizations and the logical view of the system under development, and sequence diagrams are also sometimes called event diagrams or event scenarios. Now, what I have for the rest of this is really just a couple of examples to kind of look through. If you've done any of the other BYU Idaho classes, like object-oriented programming, I think focused pretty heavily on this. It's something that's been used actually quite a lot with, I think Visio is the program that we've been primarily using in these classes to do these diagrams. But to start out, we have an example of somebody getting onto, let's say, a plane.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
Are you flipping through some slides? Because I'm still seeing the title.
I sure am, and it sure isn't going, is it? Okay, hang on.
It did that to me when I was full screen last time, too.
Yeah, here we go. There we go. All right. So this is going over what a sequence diagram is.
All right.
That's pretty much just what I just talked about. Here is the example, the diagram of getting onto a plane or a bus. So we've got first of all, we've got the passenger interacting with the passenger services check-in. You can see if we're going from top to bottom, first they're verifying the ticket. Passenger services comes back and says the ticket's okay. You load the luggage. They meanwhile go and give the luggage to baggage transportation. We express a seat preference. The passenger services check-in issues a boarding pass. We then take the boarding pass to passenger services boarding, verify that boarding pass, they verify that it's okay. So that's just a very simple real-life example of the sequence of events that you would go through in order to board on a plane or a bus. So now let's take this and let's apply it to a more technical issue. This is events for a calendar, for something like Google Calendar. So we've got the event request window first. We're going to render a form to the event request, and that's the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to put something into the calendar. We're going to, so actually, I'm sorry, this is adding a new event to a calendar. I apologize. From there, the event request is going to check the date against the calendar to find out if it's available. If it is available, it's going to add and it's going to issue an email alert. And then it's also going to go ahead and create a new event. So that's, I mean, that's really all that there is to this. And it's such a simple situation that it's kind of, the difficulty is not doing a presentation. The difficulty is doing a presentation that kind of encapsulates how simple it is. Really all it is it's a diagram of the events that have to happen for a process in the order that they have to happen. And it's a useful tool, you know, for particularly when you're working with something like object-oriented programming, because you want to know what order you need to be calling the different objects in. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just a diagram of the sequence of the events. Any questions? Hello?
All good.
All right.
Oh, that was great.
Thank you. It's, like I said, it was not a long presentation. It was pretty to the point.
Yeah. I have a presentation if we have some time. The one I was supposed to do last week.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier that we were assuming you were going to do that presentation tonight. I'm actually gonna dip out. I was telling these guys earlier, I have another class that's meeting at 8, so I am gonna go ahead and drop out. But I will see you guys next week.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Actually, I just realized. Okay, I'm going to put you guys on mute because I realized I'm doing the recording.
You're controlling. Yeah, you're controlling the recorder.
So I guess I will stay here, and
and then when you notice we're all going, you can press end.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Richard. All right, so my presentation is on Java servlets, and I'm going to share my screen. My window's not here. Oh, there it is. Can you guys see it? Okay. So what's a servlet? So if you guys remember the MVC, pattern, where there's a model, a view, and a controller. So pretty much a servlet is the controller part of that pattern. And the servlet is, of course, on the server side. So here in this diagram, you can see that on the client, you know, there's on the client side, there's a browser, and there's the different aspects of it. There's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript doing, you know, the controlling, the modeling, the view, and all that stuff. But the server, when on the web browser, there's a request that's sent to the web server, and then there's a response that's received. And as it's sent, it goes onto the server-side application, where the controller is the servlet, and it's controlling, you know, it's working together with the model and the view. So the view is like the web page, and the model are like the classes, and the controller is the one that's you know, making things happen in the background. And there, as you can see, there can be interaction with the database as well. And So there are request and response objects, and that's what the servlet is interacting with. So, and there's a set. Every time there's a request, there's also a response object that is created each time. And they're, as you can see here, they're not persistent. They're discarded after a response is sent. And they must be instantiated always. So I have a little code I can share with you to kind of show servlet in action. It's a very, very simple. Let me, it's my Eclipse. All right. So I made a simple login app. So you can see on the left side here, I have my web content, which is my view. So I started with a login page, and that's where you're brought into, and then I have my servlet, which is under the Java resources here. In check, and then it gets so just to go through it real quick. The view has a user. It's asking for a username, a password, and then there's a button that can be pressed. And when that button is pressed here, basically it's calling. You see the action here. The action of this form is login check, and what that does, it just goes to the login check.java, which is a servlet. It just calls the servlet here, and the servlet, which here it's set up as this is the URL for it, or that's added onto the URL is /login check. Here you can see there's a get method, and there's a post method, and in my login here I use a post method, which is more secure, which is
Did something happen? Because I'm not
Yeah, I'm wondering the same
hearing
thing.
Davey anymore or seeing the screen.
Yeah. Yeah, he blacked out on my end too.
Oh. That is too bad, because I had questions.
Yeah, I was about to ask one too. How you doing, McNeil?
Yeah,
I'm
glad
good.
you're here,
What
McNeil.
about you?
Yeah, doing well. So did you get your website figured out for that business?
Not yet, but almost.
Yeah, it's always like when you're close to the end, chasing down those last few bugs and getting those last few things functioning is always the worst part.
Yes.
Oh, Davey left.
Yeah, he probably knows there's an issue by now.
So maybe we'll give him a minute to rejoin.
Yeah.
So then, just off of what he's gone off right now. Oh, did he say something? Yep. Okay. So what is the purpose of, like, I'm not understanding what the difference is between MVC, just what he did last time, and then the servlets end of it. Like, do we, like, if they work without it, why do we need servlets? And if servlets improve it, why not use it all the time? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I was trying to understand that too. If a servlet is already like a built-in controller that you can call,
Yeah.
you know, they have different servlets for different purposes, and I think you can just you know, tie into them depending on what you're doing. But
So are they just then like, so would the servlets be more server side and the model view controller without servlets is more kind of web based, or I guess I'm not understanding that.
model view controller is just it's like an organization scheme for everything. You don't have to do it that way. It just results in a cleaner organization for your software, like whatever your program, whatever kind of form it's in.
Okay. And servlets.
And servlets are, so with the model view controller, my understanding based on what Davey just told us is that the servlets are a type of controller. Is that right, Davey?
Yes, that's right.
We're glad you're back because I've got questions. So the last thing I was seeing on your screen was when you were showing us the code, the do prompt, I think you were talking about.
Yeah, the do post.
Yeah, do post. My bad.
No, it's fine. Since it crashed, I don't know what it's doing now.
Oh, it's like it lost.
I lost something.
Huh.
But,
Well, it looks like it's coming back up.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The last 3 weeks, I've been having problems with my computer freezing as well.
yeah.
It's, I don't know, I've never used Eclipse before, so I don't know if that's what's doing it, or if it's something to do with the virtual machines. I don't know.
Don't you love technology?
Yes.
Super reliable and convenient
I
all
always
the
want to update
time.
to get the new patches, but then I get worried that if I update, something's going to go wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Because they have a patch to fix something with the current problem, but then the patch causes other problems. It's
Yeah, exactly.
a no-win situation.
Never-ending vicious cycle.
Yep. Job security, right, though?
Yeah.
That's right. Right. Make sure it's not perfect, guys.
So here to run this project, I have to do run on server, and then I get to pick the server that's then start that server. What is this? Windows blocking access. Allow. Okay. So here, this is normal. It says not found. See, now I'm on the server. You guys can see the 404 error, right?
Right.
And basically, I just have to go to the login.jsp because it's looking for an index.html probably file, but I have a login.jsp. And in here, that's the very simple form I have. And if I type it was Java and then 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, normally that I would call it data. I would go on the database and check. I wouldn't have that straight into the code. But when I click login, it forwarded me. It sent me to that member.jsp page which says welcome. But if I don't enter the right password, I guess it sends me to the error JSP. So that's like a super basic example of the servlet controlling, what's going to happen with this.
Well, that looks great.
Yeah, it does.
And that's a lot easier than doing the swing like I was trying, because you can just use HTML.
Yeah, HTML. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could use Swing too.
You know, it was gonna look cool. It just took way too long.
I don't even know what swing is. So then, okay, how does this model view controller with the servlets differ from the basic model view controller that you presented on last time? What's the point of having the servlets if it works without them, I guess?
Well, the servlet is on the server side, and it's the one that receives the requests and handles them, as opposed to the, as I understand it anyway, the MVC that we saw last time that Will presented, I believe. That's like straight on in the application itself. It's just a, a model, a pattern. So yeah, I kind of use that to kind of illustrate on the server side that those components are also there, or can be set up that way.
So it connects the
So-
basic like web side of the model view controller with the server side of it? Or
Well, so it, like, for example, if I was to like put mine and Davy's code together, you would end up with more than one controller. So you'd have your controller running your program, and then you would tie into the servlet as another controller on the server side to update or post information to your server.
Right. Yeah, you have the MVC going on your machine, on the local, on the website, and then you have the MVC going on the server side.
so that's the difference. One's server side and one's program side, I guess, whatever that other is called. I can't remember.
Well, MVC, it's think of it like you have a bunch of boxes, and to keep things simple, you want to keep like your kitchen stuff in the kitchen, and your office stuff in the office, and then you have this other box with like a list of where everything goes. And so your controller is just kind of directing everything, and it's talking to the other. It's a terrible analogy. I'm sure there's a better one, but it's talking to the other compartments of information and getting information passed in between them, because they don't know that the other compartment exists. Right. And so the same thing, my understanding based on what Davey told us about the servlets is it's another controller that communicates with the server. Or I'm sure that there's probably multiple types of servlets, I would guess.
Yeah, that's a good guess, I think.
I mean, I'd imagine that a lot of external resources would use a different servlet.
Yeah, definitely.
So when we're submitting our code for this topic, we could combine it like Davey had in his example with model view controller and kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I suppose you could, yeah.
I mean, are there other ways that you use the servlet outside of model view controller, or is the servlet specific for that?
The servlet. Oh, go ahead, Dave. You're the one that did the research on this part. I'm just based off of what I kind of know.
I haven't even gotten to this topic to start studying it, so.
No,
Yeah,
the servlet is just it's just like well, it's a controller. I mean, it controls what's going on between the classes and between the view. The view, like what the user sees. It's just kind of, it does the lifting behind it. It just controls what's going on, how it's going to happen, and basically it's just a separated. I mean, you could have everything the view and the model and the control all in one file, probably I suppose it's possible, but you know, it's better to separate them and keep things clean, and that way it's easier for other developers to look at later if they need. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not an expert on this subject. I wish I was.
Well, you understand it better than I do. I'm struggling with these codes.
Did you take back-end web development? The CIT 336?
Yes. The problem that I have is that I've kind of jumped around with my course route, and the last 2.5 semesters, I've been doing like the Cisco networking and all that stuff, and so I haven't done any of this like actual programming stuff for.
Right.
So it's like, oh my gosh, I can barely remember any of it, which is stressing me out because it's like I know that I know this, but I can't recall any of it.
I think an easy way, if you kind of remember how your website was set up, an easy way to think of the MVC would be like your CSS, and there's overlap, so it's not complete, but you think about it like your index page is kind of like your controller. And then you have these other pages where you're creating like the framework for what people see, and that would be your view.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have your model with you know, like the functions and the help me out, Davey, what I'm looking for.
Like the getters and setters and that, or?
Yeah, the getters and setters would be on the model. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those would be the model classes, the Java beans.
Well, so you could create your website in one single file and just have like a single page design with everything built in. But it's easier for someone else to understand what they're looking at if those things are compartmentalized.
Well, and with
you have your
controller,
CSS,
you do separate them.
right? If you have your CSS in a separate file, it's easier for someone to know, okay, all my CSS is in there, instead of having it thrown in and interspersed with your other lines of code. It's going to get confusing on what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's just a way of organizing the data, the information.
Okay. Cool. Well, do we have anything else for the evening?
I'm not sure.
Well, I think, is that it?
I guess those three presentations.
Okay. Hey, Davey, I had a couple questions for you. Can we like start a new chat and I can ask you a few things?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll send you an invite in just a second.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks,
sounds
Richard.
good.
No problem. See you
See
later.
you guys next week.